Hello everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video I want to share with you some of the most exciting details that have come out of an interview with Yoshida-san in a very long time. Now, you guys may remember I did an interview on I did an overview on the interview with Yoshida from Famitsu. He did one with 4Gamer and Dengeki, and those hadn't been translated for quite some time. However, thanks again to Slicer over on the BG forums, we now have those translated. If I'm not mistaken, I am currently looking at the Dengeki interview right here. There's some amazing details about stuff to come for 3.35 through 3.5, including some details on the reward system for Deep Dungeon, how it is going to affect progress outside of the instance, which is a very exciting thing considering the way we had been built up to believe Deep Dungeon was going to be released. First, let's get through some of the other details, however. No more Beast Tribe quests after the Mughals is the first thing. For me, I'm quite excited about that because it means that resources that usually go into writing the story for them, designing the quests, designing the rewards, are instead going to be spent elsewhere. To me, it's good that we're ending on the third Beast Tribe with the Mughals. I don't think we necessarily need more of them. It would have been welcome, but it's also been confirmed there will be no Goblin Beast Tribe quest, as Yoshida feels that the Alexander quest line is pretty much like a Goblin Beast Tribe quest in a sense. So moving on, he also says that the Scholastic he wants to make sure it's very coherent, and he doesn't want to be pushing it out at the same pace that Hildebrand is being pushed out. Now, Palace of the Dead information is right here, and we got some amazing information regarding this. So in case you didn't know, you can enter Deep Dungeon as early as level 17, and they are going to discuss things like what it's like going in at level 1, what the early levels are like leveling up and getting new skills and whatnot. The fact that there's no role requirements. There's a lot of really basic information here. Like, for example, White Mage using Cleric Stance can be pretty strong right from the start of the dungeon. So if you want to make that your first cross-class skill, not a bad idea at all. And then, of course, you'll be leveling up so fast you'll get your actions really quick once you're in there. Now, he talks about some of the additional actions set in advance, ways to optimize the early floors. Now, then they talk about how it sort of affects the outside world, how it interacts with the duty finder, how do you get to keep any of the experience, is there any gear that you can get inside Palace of the Dead that you can take outside of Palace of the Dead with you and use in the full game. And we got great details on all that stuff. Up until this point, we were pretty much convinced that Deep Dungeon was its own sort of locked away progression system where nothing inside Deep Dungeon registered in the outside world and vice versa. But now we are led to believe the complete opposite, that while your progression inside Deep Dungeon is completely on its own, it does carry over into the full world when you exit. So, with that in mind, they said that you will be able to enter Palace of the Dead through an NPC, so you can participate through it sort of in the duty finder, but it said it's really just more like free rolls like you would in Frontline. So you will be able to queue in with other people and go in, but you'll have to speak to this NPC captain at Quarry Mill in order to enter. How far will you be able to progress in 3.35? We will be getting the first 50 floors to start, and then in either 3.45 or 3.5, somewhere around that vicinity, we'll be getting all the way up to floor 200. So we'll be going from floor 51 to floor 200. Since it seems we'll already be at max level when we reach level 50, it's curious, or the 50th floor I should say, I'm curious to see what progression looks like in the other 150 floors. Also, we have to make sure this content is successful, though the more I hear about it, the more excited I get for this kind of content, because I had a lot of concerns about it, and a lot of them are being addressed here in this interview. So, is there an assumption on leveling to reach floor 50? It's bound, so you'll be around level 60 at floors 40 and above. The last 10 floors are designed for level 60 players. Okay, good to know. So we're pretty much expected to be level 60 really quickly. So it will not only be important to upgrade your weapons and armor, but also to level up. You'll level up really fast, that much is expected. Will matchmaking be for people who are near each other in item level? Matchmaking criteria is not based on level, it's based on floor progress. Palace of the Dead is broken up into 10 floor increments, so if you've beaten the 20th floor, the next time you enter matchmaking, you'll be teamed up with other players who have also reached the 20th floor. So that's a good thing to know if you're going to queue up through that captain over in Quarry Mill. Can you play from the first floor up through the 50th floor in one run? He says yes, and it'll probably take approximately 3 hours. I am fully anticipating doing that as soon as patch 3.35 goes live, probably in early to mid-July. Once you completed the deepest floor, what happens for future play? Good question. These are all amazing questions for them to be asking him. Why would I go back in after level 50? The shining weapons that you've seen in the trailers can only be used outside once you reach a certain level. So even after you get to the 50th floor, you'll want to continue to participate in order to train your weapon. So it's not just about your character's progress. You really are trying to increase the power of your weapon and, as we'll find out in here very soon, your armor, so that you can use it outside of Palace of the Dead. So, with that out of the way, let's move on to some more details. How often is your completion progress recorded? Every 10 floors. You kind of answered that already. So your goals will be to move up each set of 10 floors. Are there any limitations to how often you can enter? There's no limit to how often you can enter, and like you said, you can enter as early as reaching level 17. How exactly is completion progress saved? Okay, so there's a lot of details here, so I'm going to read this word for word. The dungeon equipment can be enhanced with certain effects specific to the dungeon. The stat advancement on your equipment is saved, and there are two types of floor progress that are saved. One is a personal progress flag that can be used for matchmaking. The other progress is for a fixed party. For the latter, if you save data in a 4-person party and you want to continue from that point, you'll have to gather the same 4 people before you continue. So you can do this both ways at the same time, working on your own progress and working on the progress with a fixed party. So there's basically 2 different forms of matchmaking, kind of like you would do it for PvP, but that's an interesting way of going about it, because what if I don't want to gather the other same 3 people? That makes things a little bit odd. So if it's for a fixed party, I wonder if I can go in with multiple types of fixed parties. You know, like what if I want to play with these friends right now, these 3 friends, and we get up to floor 40, but then I have a few friends that log in later that night, and they want me to come along. Am I gonna cancel out my floor 40 progress with the other 3 members, or am I gonna build a new type of fixed matchmaking? Because that's a lot of data to be saving to constantly have to create these new saves on the back-end server. So I'm curious to see how that works out. That's not precisely answered here, but we're moving on because there's more exciting things. What happens if people from 2 different parties team up with separate party data? Equipment strengthening is the same, so they would start from floor 1 on separate progress data. So yeah, you would just basically queue in with another group, and it would be its own separate progress data, but their equipment will be at whatever state it was when you enhanced it with the other party. Cool. If you enter once with 4 people and you go later with 3 of the same people, will you need to restart from floor 1? No, you continue from previous progress. He pretty much just answered that. If you go in with the same people, you continue the regular progress. If you go in with different people, you'll start over. But one thing interesting here, however, because those 3 people would have entered separately, they would not be able to proceed later on with the one person who was not there. It's a bit hard to explain it all in words, but Deep Dungeon has been designed as a throwback to the old Final Fantasy style with the interface and save data. So you should be able to figure it out pretty quickly. It sounds like we get save slots, like PlayStation 1 memory card save slots is what it's starting to sound like. If you've already reached, say, the 20th floor, can you restart from the first floor? You can do that, but you wouldn't be able to start from the 10th floor, for example. So you can only either start from the very beginning again, or you can start from the 20th floor, which is the last place you had a save point. You can't start from one in between. In the case of starting from the 40th floor, you could either go back and start from the first floor, but you couldn't start from 10, 20, or 30. You'd only be able to start from 1 or 40. So what happens if a player who is level 10 and a player who is level 60 entered together? As I mentioned before, save data is fixed to your party, so it doesn't matter. In that example, level 60 and a level 10 friend will both start at level 1. Let's see. And then okay, so this is the first big detail right here. Level 60 players will eventually reach level 60 in the content, but what will happen if a player who's only level 10? They'll reach level 60 in the same way. Within the dungeon alone, you can break past the level that you are on the outside of the dungeon. So a level 10 player could get to the very final floor of Deep Dungeon and be good to go. My question is, can free trial people do this? Because this will basically solve all, not all issues, I guess, because you still won't have all your job skills and whatnot, but I have to wonder if that's gonna really be good for the free trial, because the free trial people can go into this, they can essentially test all of their class skills up to level 50 and the first 2 job skills while playing at level 60, which is kind of strange because within Deep Dungeon the rules are entirely different, but it's an interesting thing to allow. On top of that, and I'm waiting for the point where it gets here, it's confirmed somewhere in this interview that a portion of the experience points you gain inside of Deep Dungeon will apply to your character when you leave. So if you're not level 60 yet, Deep Dungeon is an effective means of leveling up your character. So that is something I was wondering, like if a level 17 goes in here, why is he going in here? And now I've got my answer. It's another method of leveling alternate classes. I don't know how that's going to play out when it comes to going in with different jobs or trying to start from the first floor again, like what's going to be the most effective. But that is very, very good to know, because that is something that you can tell people, hey, you want to do some dungeoneering to level up? Great, that's a new way of leveling up. Let's see. Yes, here alone you can level up to 60 even if you don't have the expansion pack. That's crazy. That is insane. You don't even need the expansion. So hopefully free trial people can get in on this. Let's see. Number of rooms are small. So the earlier floors have smaller rooms, and the later floors have bigger rooms, bigger floors. And the floor, like remember, these floors are all randomly generated, so they're never going to be the same when you enter twice. Are there any rewards from this content that you will be able to utilize outside? If you participate enough and train your equipment so that the values reach a certain level, the reward is that you can take the trained equipment outside. How strong will it be? The item level is high enough to have practical use in 3.35. Now, given that you can play it as many times as you want freely, it won't be as strong as a completed anima weapon or augmented lore gear. They're pretty much saying it's going to be either i230 or i235, because they're literally just saying it's not as strong as i240. It could literally be any item level before that, but he says it's practical use. So 230 or 235 item level gear will come from training your equipment enough in Deep Dungeon. That is crazy, and I'm definitely going to be utilizing that to hopefully get some alternate gear for my other jobs. And that kind of gives us an idea of what the rewards will be like from floors 51 to 200, because you'll probably be able to raise that equipment to a point of practical use in those patches as well. So all of a sudden, Deep Dungeon has a lot of relevance in the current content for people who are still trying to gear up, who haven't yet beaten Savage tiers, or some people who just don't feel like doing the hunt or weekly 24-man raids to get up to the highest level. It's offering new means of reaching higher item level points, something I didn't expect from it at all. And then he says, yeah, use it to gear an alternate job. You can use it for glamour. And keep in mind the gear that you get will be based on the job you enter on. So keep that in mind. It's pretty important. And here's where it says you'll get some amount when you leave the dungeon as well. So you can use this as a resource for experience while leveling up. It won't be a 1-to-1 ratio, but you'll get some experience. So it's honestly, this is a pretty crazy thing. Just to see that. Now, according to what they're saying here, the story will end on the 100th floor, and floors 101 to 200 will be much more challenging than the first 100 floors. Curious to see how that pans out, since there's a boss every 10 floors. But again, it sounds like something that is brand new, that is... I want it to be successful, because this is, if they can come up with successful content like this, the game will stay very much more afloat than it already does, bringing new types of content like this. Diadem didn't work, but we're getting Diadem 2.0 and like 3.4 or 3.5. Deep Dungeon seems to be developing into a piece of content that is not only fun to do, it's different from everything else, it can be done regardless of level as long as you're 17. It has rewards for people leveling, rewards for people at max level. It seems like it has everything that is needed to create a successful piece of content. We just need to see if it's fun. Because there's no role requirements, it's difficult to tell how fun or challenging it will actually be before that 101st floor. And then moving on, this one specifically says this was from 4Gamer. The ranking that's going to be implemented, they will add ranking for all floors 1 to 200 to see how far people can make it up solo. And then, of course, they're also expecting people to try speedruns. So we'll see things like that. Where will all the rankings be in a hierarchy? We plan to have scores for each job. We've already discussed that before. And then they talk about the general game direction, which is something that's incredibly interesting because it's a major point of talking when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV. One of the very few sub-based MMOs in a market that has gone almost entirely free to play, minus 1 or 2 other games like EVE Online or World of Warcraft. So he talks about enduring MMOs in the current duration, the main gameplay happens at level cap. Being self-aware that, yeah, it pretty much does. But that, for the most part, everyone is playing at the level cap. However, with some players' real-life friends join the game, begin as new players, outside of level sync dungeons, they can't really play well together, which is one of the most important elements. We felt the need to address this with more ways that players can play together. Deep Dungeon is very clearly one of those manners. And then there's people who want to play casually without doing much prep, others who still have trouble with matchmaking for certain roles. So, I mean, that eliminates even more problems. Think about that. Leveling with Deep Dungeon, it has no role assignment. You're never going to be, oh, I am a DPS, I have a long queue for Deep Dungeon because I'm a DPS. No, you won't, because it'll literally just grab 3 other people and match you up with them. Or you can grab any 3 friends, regardless of job, and go in there and make some sort of progress, probably, even if you have to bring potions that you've been collecting from your quests. It seems like Deep Dungeons is sort of like a giant, like, here, let's solve everything with one giant piece of content. So it's a question of how successful it'll be. They are aligned in the way. A major part of the diadem, which was added, oh, I gotta read this, was developed to be experimental to see how players would utilize the system. The system included values for both first generation and current generation MMOs, and there was a need to continue to test values for a next generation MMO. I believe that we need to do experiments like this to extend the life cycle of the game. So he believes that things like the diadem, while it wasn't necessarily successful, experimenting like that is important for the health of the game, to make sure that it stays healthy, the population stays good, it brings in money, all that good stuff. I sort of agree with that, but diadem was really bad. So I don't know if experimenting on the live servers is necessarily the right idea. I agree they should try new things, maybe not so severely as that. We're also going to be changing up the gameplay based on feedback. We knew this. Many of the staff wanted to stick with elements that were closer to first generation. From the feedback we received, it's clear that players are looking for a system and content which leads players on to continue to play it. To make good of this, we're creating content with a mix of first generation and second generation elements. Now, when he talks about first and second generation, things like Final Fantasy XI, EverQuest, those are considered first generation MMOs. World of Warcraft was probably the creation of second generation MMOs, and you probably consider more things like action MMOs nowadays are probably considered third generation. He calls it second generation. I don't know if he has something regarding third generation. Content will more clearly lead players, so it's clear how players will be rewarded even with little to no conversation. The earlier thought of endlessly camping monsters simply to farm them didn't really match the current generation of gamers. I agree, so I've talked strongly about the necessity to prepare elements that involve everyone in the area. Based on that, even though it will retain some elements and make it feel like a continuation of the Sea of Cloud search content, the atmosphere will be quite different. I should note that although Palace of the Dead is the Deep Dungeon for now, we're also looking to continue with Deep Dungeon as a new content category. So we like to talk about with Final Fantasy XIV that they have a formula, 2 dungeons, main story, Hildebrand, New Primal, Hard Mode, Extreme. Like, that's part of the formula. They want to add Deep Dungeon and make it a part of that formula, something that is constantly supported. That is very difficult because they keep adding things to this formula that need to be updated, and it's a questionable thing about whether or not it's spreading things too thin. It's making it so that the content doesn't have enough depth to it. I hope that doesn't happen with Deep Dungeon. I hope it doesn't suffer because they want to basically do what Activision did to the Call of Duty series and just throw it in every year, or every patch in this case. I hope that that's not what happens to it, but it's interesting to hear that if something's successful, they want to continue to support it, which is good. That's something that an MMO developer should be doing. And they've already decided what the next Deep Dungeon will be. It hasn't even gotten into our hands yet, and they're already planning the next one. They said they were doing this for Diadem too, and then they barely touched it after that until 3.4, 3.5. So that's ballsy, Yoshi P, but hopefully you're not much more past the planning phase on that one. Let's see. Challenging elements players just from the beginning. So, yeah, and then for the most part, they just talk about patch 3.3, their aspirations moving on, talking about the 3rd anniversary fan festival, and then there's some miscellaneous things here. I'm talking about some random things like add more rewards to the gold saucer, talking about obtaining the Fenrir mount. When it comes to land, well, you'll be implementing a system to allow moves. Because it requires moving enormous amounts of data, we're working on that quite carefully. As we mentioned in the 28th Producer Live letter, you'll be able to move your houses. It will be some point after the implementation of apartments in 3.4. Remember, those of you who weren't able to get houses, the Ishgard apartments are coming in about 3 months, so there's going to be a lot more space for people to move into. Overall, this was one of my favorite interviews to read. The amount of details about Deep Dungeon, all the questions that were answered. I don't even need E3 next week anymore because that's what they were supposed to talk about at E3. That was incredibly exciting. As you can tell, I'm super hyped right now about Deep Dungeon, coming in probably about 5 to 6 weeks. That's usually how long it is between a major patch and a sub-patch like 3.35. So tell me, what do you think about the details of Deep Dungeon? Is it something you're looking forward to now with these new details, with all these rewards? Or is it something that, he'll take a step back from. Let me know in the comment section of the video below. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned for the latest Final Fantasy XIV news, information guides, all that good stuff. I will see you all next time, and until then, take care.